be with us from now until 9:30.
Yeah, it's going to be a minute though.
Okay, yeah, thank you. Well, first of all, Tim arranged this, Timothy Alberino arranged this trip, and I've got to say it was mind-blowing in the fact that we got a personal tour, and not only a tour, but a lesson in history by one of, right now, the foremost explorer, adventure archaeologist in the world, Anselm P. Rambla. I'm not Doug, excuse me. I'm not just going to share, and we're not just going to share about the True Legends conference that we had in Peru, but we're going to share some amazing discoveries with people that should cause them to actually put stuff into perspective. Richard Sauter and others have talked about the underground tunnel systems. I've talked about it, especially the correlation between wherever you have a known, well-developed or very legendary tunnel system, there's either a military base, there's either a church, monastery, convent, or something over it to control the entrance to it. So we were fortunate to go into the Coricancha, which is one of the largest churches in Cusco, Peru, that is literally the entranceway into the Chincana, which is the underground tunnel system, all the way to Sacsayhuama. Now, why Sacsayhuama is so important, that's probably the most pronounced megalithic, or what we would call cyclopean architecture site in the world. But in tracking this thing, we also found out that it appears to be the largest stargate in the world. So just as Mount Graham and the Lucifer telescope have been under Vatican control, looking to the skies and obviously looking for something that they know is coming, the control of the Chincana, the tunnel system that leads to Sacsayhuaman and beyond. And if you look at the celestial coordinates, it's mind-boggling. No one but someone with a heavenly, if you will, viewpoint. I'm not talking godly, but I'm talking about something that came to earth could have laid it out more correctly. So what we were privileged to see, and I'm going to put this, I'm not going to put it, but I'm going to have my guy put it up on the website, so you'll see it tomorrow. The picture literally of Anselm P. Rambla and Timothy Alberino standing in front of an altar in the Coricancha, and that's spelled Coricancha, with literally the door that Anselm was given permission to go in, searching for the searching for the Chincana. And basically, Doug, when Tim comes on, I will have him go into greater detail. I'll deal with some stuff in the end.
Steve, Tim is on.
Be on with us.
Okay. Tim is
so yeah,
on.
I'm gonna yield to him. Tim, I just basically laid out Anselm, and I'm gonna post a picture of you and he standing in front of that altar thing where he showed us the floor. So, by the way, good job on the entire tour, and I think it's important that we share with people just some of the revelations that came out of it. So do you want to take it from there? Because again, you're only on for an hour, I'm on for 90 minutes, so I want to let you speak until you need a break.
Sure. Thank you. Good evening, gentlemen. We had a fantastic trip out in Cusco, and one of the most astounding revelations that we received hanging out with Anselm P. Rambla, the renowned Spanish explorer, and some of the guys from his team, Boa Cruz, some of the guys that are actually on his team in Cusco were with us, and he showed us some of the work he's been doing over the last decade or so. And much of that work concerns Sacsayhuaman. Sacsayhuaman is a megalithic fortress. Well, it's really not a fortress, but it's what is referred to as a fortress. Many of the mainstream archaeologists claim that Sacsayhuaman was built as a citadel by Pachacutec, the Incan king. But there is not a single archaeologist that I've spoke with in Peru who will say privately that the Inca had anything to do with the building of Sacsayhuaman or the other megaliths in Peru for that matter. They have no idea who built the walls of Sacsayhuaman. They know that the Inca could not have done it. These are private conversations I've had with both archaeologists, anthropologists, historians, and men from other scientific disciplines in Peru, and these are Peruvian gentlemen. And they privately will tell you, publicly they'll say, and in their dissertations and in their papers, publicly they'll say that the Sacsayhuaman and all the other megaliths in Peru were built by the Inca. But privately, they'll say, no way, there's no way the Inca could build them. And they'll usually they'll espouse the ancient aliens doctrine when talking about the walls of Sacsayhuaman. So it was very interesting to get the perspective of a man, Anselm P. Rambla, who actually did excavations at Sacsayhuaman and in other places, because most people who study the walls have never actually been privileged to dig into the soil around the walls. First of all, the fortress of Sacsayhuaman, what you see above ground, and what you see above ground is extremely impressive. But what you see above ground is only 15% of the entire complex, 15 to 20%. That means that 80% of Sacsayhuaman is still beneath the soils that were deposited, in our opinion, during the Great Flood. In fact, it's basically it looks as if it's sitting on a mountain, but it's not. It's an entire megalithic complex under the ground. In other words, 80% of that complex is buried under the ground, and Anselm was able to verify this with his excavations. But what was really intriguing, and I guess what the bottom line is here concerning Sacsayhuaman, is that Anselm has determined through his investigations, and he shared this with us in Cusco, that Sacsayhuaman is in fact a stargate, and the largest stargate on Earth. And that's why, part of the reason why Cusco has been called for so long and for so many reasons the navel of the world. Now, what's important to understand about Sacsayhuaman is, again, not just what you can see today, what's still existent today, because there's only 15 to 20% of the wall is exposed today, and much of that wall has been disassembled at the higher levels, was disassembled by the Spaniards, who used it to build their churches and other edifices that you find in the city of Cusco. But it's what's below that complex that is so important. And what's below Sacsayhuaman is a vast network of underground tunnels and caverns, both artificial and naturally occurring. And it's basically an entrance. And Steve, I don't think that this is far-fetched to say. It's basically an entrance into the underworld beneath Sacsayhuaman. And connecting to Sacsayhuaman, there is, from the Coricancha. The Coricancha was the primary temple of the Inca. That was, in fact, the Coricancha was the center of the empire. It was literally the center of the empire, and it's where the Inca held their most important festivals and celebrations and sacrifices and everything that in fact, that's, according to the chroniclers, that's where the Incan kings were entombed, was within the Coricancha, within what's called the Temple of the Sun. And they were actually mummified. The Incan kings were mummified, and they were set inside of the Coricancha on gilded thrones. And they wore these bejeweled cloaks that were encrusted with jewels and other precious metals. And these were dead, mummified kings sitting inside of the Coricancha because they were believed to be immortal. And every so often they would for certain ceremonies, they would take the kings out of the Coricancha, the dead kings, the mummified kings, and they would parade them around the city of Cusco as if they were still alive. So the Coricancha was the center of the empire. The walls of the Coricancha, of this Incan temple, were covered in plates of gold. There was, outside of the Coricancha, there was a garden that was about 5 acres, and it was filled with all kinds of gold and silver artifacts. And these were depictions of flowers and birds and animals and corn, the famous stalks of corn, that the leaves were made of pure gold, of pure silver, and the actual corn itself was made, the actual head of corn was made of pure gold. There was so much gold in the Coricancha that much of the famous ransom of Atahualpa, the ransom that the Incan king paid to be released by the Spaniards, came from the Coricancha. And so this was the center of the empire. This was the religious center point of the empire. And from the Coricancha, from the temple of the Inca, running from the Coricancha to Sacsayhuaman, actually to the underworld below Sacsayhuaman, to the labyrinth below Sacsayhuaman, was a 1 mile long megalithic tunnel. And the walls of that tunnel were covered in megalithic Cyclopean architecture, extremely impressive megalithic Cyclopean architecture. So imagine, it's impressive enough to consider the megalithic architecture that is above ground in the Cori Concha and other places, but now consider megalithic architecture being constructed beneath the ground for 1 mile, running beneath the city of Cusco to the labyrinth beneath the Sacsayhuaman, the fortress of Sacsayhuaman, what archaeologists call the fortress of Sacsayhuaman, but which we believe now, because of Anselm's work, was in fact a stargate. So I don't believe that the Inca built that tunnel, and I don't believe that the Inca built the temple of the Cori Concha, the temple of the sun. I believe that the whole complex, Sacsayhuaman and the megalithic foundations of the Cori Concha and all of the other impressive megaliths found in the city of Cusco were in fact built by an advanced culture in the world before the flood of Noah, the antediluvian world, the pre-flood world, that there was an advanced culture building to great scale, very, very possibly giants, or at least giants might have been involved in the construction of this complex. And it was surely using an advanced form of masonry that has been lost to us because of the flood. So it is Sacsayhuaman and Cusco and the Cori Concha and Cusco at large is, I believe, one of the most dynamic and important locations on the planet in terms of megaliths, in terms of giants, and in terms of the advanced civilizations that existed in the world before the flood. So it was astounding to actually be there with Steve, with L.A. Marzulli, with Anselm P. Rambla, and the rest of our crew, and all of our guests during the True Legends expedition and seminar. It was astounding to actually be on location, receiving this revelation from Anselm and his team and his work, that we were in fact standing in front of what was very likely the largest stargate on Earth.
And Doug, one of the things that I think is very interesting is when we were being shown a presentation by Anselm, and ladies and gentlemen, we're going to be putting out a DVD on this because there's just so much stuff to share on a radio program. You really got to see it. But one of the things that just kept going over and over in my mind, there are unusual holes or unusual references to holes, and directly across from the big walls that you'll see. I'm posting all these shots, photos, Tim, on my website daily, and I should have that one of you and Anselm standing and looking at the very thing on the floor, the doorway into the Shinkana, but it looks like a step pyramid that's been filled in over the years. And what's fascinating about this is it's kind of like this. Imagine, if you will, a giant coliseum, circular. The field area is circular, and or actually more oval-like. And imagine that the sounds that everyone's hearing around the world are preemptory. Now, some may be fake, some may be generated, but at some point, something opens and will open this. And I won't say this for sure, but I've been praying, Doug, Joe, and Tim, about this. Is this truly the entrance to the bottomless pit that opens up? If it is the navel of civilization, it was called that. I think Tim's got or was on YouTube, and maybe on my site, linkable still. There's a reason why all of the references to harmonic levitation, for those of you that ever bought my book, True Legends, obviously that's the name of the series. Go to the back of the book, literally the back cover, and you'll see a giant, if you will, Incan or Mayan levitating rocks by using a strange system of basically acoustic levitation. This is not New Age. It is not Spiritism. It is not mysticism. It's the same principle in which UFOs and other unidentified flying objects and reverse-engineered flying objects work doing by generating electrogravity. Electrogravitics. There we go. And what else is really important is this. Tim and I in L.A. met with Brian Forrester. He's convinced these things are giant machines, and with good reason. Now, obviously, to get a feel for this, we're going to be reconstructing this with one of the, I think, the premier concept artists in the world. And if you've seen Holocaust of Giants, many of the stills, the motion graphics in there were done by our artists. And by the way, Tim, he's working on Sacsayhuaman right now. And Tim's in, by the way, he's in another part of Ohio, and I'm in Bozeman, so we're not sitting in the same studio. So I don't get to talk to him except when I'm on the air very much, unless we email each other. But I'm going to encourage people, if you want the heads up. Now, look, we're not following anybody on YouTube. We're not stealing anybody's stuff, although, our stuff, Doug, is stolen and printed, and thank God, Rhonda, bless you for finding all these pirates. But the thing is that I'm telling you this, there was such a sense of awe that we're not looking at old history. We're previewing one of the most important contemporary events yet to come. And by the grace of God and through his mercy, I'm telling you, we're absolutely on the cusp of multiple revelations breaking out all over the world, and the powers that be, Doug, will not be able to contain it.
It's amazing, man. It's amazing.
Yeah. So again, here's the thing, ladies and gentlemen, you need to get a copy of our, DVD series. This isn't a pitch, but we've got to take you from where we left off in the Holocaust of Giants to what we're talking about, because, again, it is so important. The Unholy See has to be the most important, I'd say, DVD until the Holocaust of Giants came out. And, Doug, it seems like God is giving us precept upon precept, revelation upon revelation. And, look, we pray about this stuff. We had a miracle. And, Tim, I want you to explain, number one, we also have a propensity getting in trouble. So we were in the Coricancha, and, you could tell that Rome's finest were there. I'm not making fun of any Catholics. I'm talking about their intelligence service, because they did not want us to film. Fortunately, God had arranged for the same prior, what is it, Tim, Father Gamarra, what was he when he gave Anselm the right to dig there? What do you call the head guy?
He was the prior. The prior refers to the head, to the head Dominican at that particular cathedral.
Yeah. Now listen to this. Now I'm just going to say this, and you take it from here. We were told that Father Gamarra, the head prior, former guy that had given Anselm permission, wasn't in there. He wasn't to be found. And that was by the guy wearing probably, my guess, $2,000 suit, probably a $500 tie, earpieces, and I know the difference between head spooks and little spooks. This guy was a head spook. So, Tim, take it from there. I mean, we're Anselm. Go ahead.
Well, we had unprecedented access to the Coricancha, but specifically to the Cathedral of Santo Domingo, which is connected to the Coricancha, actually sitting on top of it. And the whole area, the convent, the cathedral, the Coricancha itself, is all now owned by the Vatican, specifically by the Dominican Order, and has been since right after the conquest of the city of Cusco by Francisco Pizarro. So, it is strictly forbidden to film inside of any Catholic church in Peru, especially inside of the Church of Santo Domingo. And so we went the first time we went and we filmed for the Unholy See. We had to do it undercover. This time we had a group of about 40 people. Everybody had cameras and cell phones. We had our professional camera crew and our professional cameras and tripods and all the paraphernalia of a camera crew. And we walked in with Anselm P. Ramla and began to film. And Anselm began to take us around the church and show us everywhere he excavated inside the church, primarily where he excavated and discovered where he had gone down into the Chincana in 1982, and then where he came back in the year 2000 to actually do a professional excavation to open the Chincana. And if you've seen our second film, you know exactly what we're talking about. So he showed us exactly where he was, what he was doing, and we were able to stand there with Anselm and film the whole thing. And it was absolutely fascinating, because there's no way you can walk in with a group of 40 people and cameras without having somebody like Anselm P. Ramla with you. And so we filmed for a while, and then finally some of the security guys showed up and wanted us to turn the cameras off, but Anselm was speaking with great authority, because he had he knew all of the Dominicans at the time, and in 2000, many of whom were still there, and he was demanding to see Father Gamara, who was a good friend of his, who was the head of the Dominican order in Cusco during the time in which he was doing his excavation. So we were able to film a whole lot. It was fascinating, and I know those who were on the trip agreed that it was absolutely fascinating, and those who were on this trip got to be a part of something that will never happen again. I mean, it was unprecedented access with Anselm P. Ramla. And then to top it all off, these guys told Anselm that Father Gamara was no longer around. He wasn't in the city of Cusco anymore, and that he couldn't be contacted. And they lied right to his face, because after a while, Anselm finally, well, I don't even think they told him anything. We agreed to turn the cameras off after we had filmed everything we wanted to film. We walked out of the Church of Santo Domingo, and we walked next door, which is still part of the church property, the Coricancha, which was the interior of the Coricancha. We walked in with our camera crew, which you don't just walk into the Coricancha with a camera crew either, but we did. And during the course of our filming, Father Gamara shows up, and Father Gamara at this point in time, I think, is 70-some years old, and I think he's in his mid to late 70s, and he shows up in his Dominican robe. And Anselm hadn't seen Father Gamara for I think 15 years, and so it was this amazing reunion. It was a very heartwarming, emotional reunion between Anselm P. Ramla and Father Gamara, and they embraced, and Father Gamara welcomed us and told us and Anselm told us that Father Gamara was the reason why excavations were ever even begun and had ever begun in the Coricancha in the first place. And it's true, Father Gamara opened the door. Father Gamara, unlike many of the other agents of Rome in Cusco, wanted the truth concerning the Coricancha to be known. Now let me explain something. The knowledge of the Coricancha was only passed down by the Dominicans from prior to prior. In other words, from head Dominican to head Dominican. The lay Dominicans, the Dominican priests were not privy to the information concerning the Shinkana. Only the head Dominican, the prior, had access to the library. Him and a few others, and the knowledge of the Shinkana was passed down from prior to prior. So, in other words, when a new head Dominican was appointed and brought into the Church of Santo Domingo, the previous prior, the prior that was handing off the scepter of authority, if you will, would brief the incoming head priest concerning the Shinkana. And it's important for everybody to know that the Shinkana, according to traditional history, according to conventional history, conventional archaeology, the Shinkana and the underground world beneath Cusco is a myth. It's a wives' tale. It's a legend. There's nothing true about it, and it's a conspiracy theory. But Anselm P. Ramla proved back in 2000 that in fact it was not a myth. It was real, and you have to understand the implications of the Shinkana being real. Because what you're talking about is this vast labyrinth, this vast underworld hidden beneath the soils of the Andes Mountains that exists. And not only is there legends of this vast underworld, there's also many legends concerning the entities that inhabit it. So it's a massive. The implications are absolutely massive concerning the Shinkana. So there we are, standing in the Church of Santo Domingo with Anselm P. Ramla embracing his old friend Father Gamara. And Father Gamara looks at the camera. He looks right at the camera, and he makes this statement, which is it is historic. I mean, we witnessed history being made in the Coricancha. He looked at the camera and he said, "The Shinkana is here," and he pointed down. The Shinkana is here. Now that is a closely guarded secret, passed from prior to prior, and he's looking at our group of 40 people, and he's looking into our camera, and he is disclosing to the world that the Shinkana is real, and it is here. It is beneath the soils of the Coricancha. And that's an explosive statement because, again, of the implications associated with it. Now, remember, there are the term Shinkana in general, refers to the underworld beneath the Andes. Now, that's tunnels, that's caverns. Some of those tunnels are artificially occurring. Some of those tunnels are naturally occurring. But it's the massive labyrinth beneath the Andes Mountains, and specifically, there's a tunnel that goes from the Coricancha to beneath Sacsayhuaman. That's the one that the priors have known about. In fact,
And Tim,
Anselm P. Rambla has had.
Tim, hold
Go ahead.
that thought. We're up against the break. Folks, we're talking with Tim Alberino and Steve Quayle, both back from a trip in Peru. And fascinating what you just laid out, Tim, the misdirections, the lies that you guys were given, and then to find exactly what you were looking for and be told what you already believed to be true by the man who would know best. We're going to pick up right where we left off on the other side. Folks, you're listening to this edition